don't really even realize as an associate all the different personalities and situations and like life factors of the personnel that you hire. But being an owner is just like, it's a lot to digest. That was the most vulnerable, I'd say stressful spot I thus far have had in life.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Practice Launch Podcast. I am your host, Shane Simmons. I'm the founder of Crimson Media, where we help dental companies build freedom in their practice through proven online marketing. And as you know, we talk startups and new practice acquisitions all the time on this podcast. And today is episode 74, and I brought on a special guest to share with us their startup journey, their story, and opening a pediatric startup in the great state of Texas. So we're really excited to get into that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Sarah Severson. And first off, Sarah, thank you for hopping on here. Is this your first podcast you've done?
Yeah. Yes.
So first podcast, okay, which let's just be honest here, pretty much every doctor we interview on these, it's their first podcast. So congratulations on your first podcast. Let's get that out the way first. But, Sarah and I, we connected. It's been a couple of years now. Yeah. And I remember, chatting with you, and you were, going through kind of the process of, you're going to be opening a pediatric, startup practice just outside of Austin, Texas. And that seems like it was literally 4 months ago to me. And it's been over 2 years since that conversation happened. And here you are, right? A lot has happened between the opening of that practice to where you're at today. Yeah. And I am so excited to dive into it and hear a little bit about it. But first, can you just maybe give us a little bit of background of your practice, where you're located, and kind of why you wanted to go into practice ownership?
Yeah, so like Shane said, I'm from the Austin area. I actually was born and raised in Austin. I grew up the first half of my life in South Austin, and then my mom got a job on the north side of town, and we ended up moving to a suburb just outside of Austin called Round Rock. So I went to middle school in Round Rock and high school as well. And so, yeah, it's come full circle. I ended up purchasing a home about 6 years ago in South Central Austin, and when I was looking with a commercial real estate agent for different lease spaces, and based on demographics of pediatric patients to pediatric dentist, the ratio wasn't amazing where I am, and the leases were pretty astronomical. So I ended up going back to my roots of okay, let's check out the Round Rock area. And sure enough, there's tons of kids out here and families. So been a shortage of pediatric dentists. So I decided to open a practice in Round Rock. But yeah, I live in Austin.
So, and Austin is a exploding city as far as growth. Yes. It just, so much growth that's happened in Austin. And even where you're at, I feel in Round Rock, it's just like any big major metropolitan, it expands out, and, we're seeing a lot of growth there too. But what was it like, I guess, well, let me circle back here for a second. You had been practicing as an associate, I assume, for, a few years. What was it that led you to be I want to do my own thing? Was there anything that kind of drew you to that? Was that always the plan? And not just, staying in an associateship?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I knew pretty early on into associateship that I wanted to be an owner. But I think most other relatively new grads, it's a very daunting, overwhelming process. And you just kind of want to get your feet on the ground first as an associate, just managing the clinical flow of private practice versus residency or dental school, even where you're seeing 2 or 4 patients a day. So I feel like I did my time as an associate for 6.5 years, 7 years. And I learned quite a lot. I had a lot of different associate jobs, so I was fortunate in that realm. But I think I always knew if I wanted to practice the way that I wanted to and have that clinical autonomy, I really wasn't going to be able to do that in the settings of the associateships I had. So some people are blessed with really great, amazing associateships where they kind of can operate as carte blanche as their own like clinically autonomous person, but that wasn't really the case for most of my associate jobs. And also mine required a lot of commuting, and I knew I was getting to the point I wanted to start like a family, and it wasn't going to be realistic for me to drive an hour plus one way twice a day 3 to 4 days a week like indefinitely. So that also was a motivator, just to like set up shop closer to home. I still commute actually, but it's about half the time that I was doing previously, so that I could shift gears and have a family. Yeah.
There's some people, I've probably told you this before, but I remember like when we were initially, onboarding you as a client. So, we've worked with Dr. Severson now since before the opening. But I remember when we were onboarding you as a client, I was kind of like going over things with the team before. I was like, there's some people that you talk to that you just know it's like they were born to do what they do. It's like, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was like, she was born to work with kids and be a pediatric dentist. Like, she has just that personality. Because you talk to some people who are, pediatric dentists and they're great, but they just, when you talk to them, you don't get that vibe right away. It's like it's like I knew right away, like talking to you. It's like, yeah, that's your thing. So was that always the dream though, was pediatrics, or did something happen in dental school that kind of led down that path?
No, that's a great question. I knew like as a child that I wanted to work with kids. I always thought I was going to be a pediatrician, ironically enough, but I have one sibling and she's 7 years younger than me. So I was kind of like her mini mom, I would say. And I ended up babysitting everyone in town, like all of our neighborhood. I babysat in dental school for a lot of my like friends in dental school, their babies. So I always had an affinity for like young kids. Just, yeah, I feel like I'm a kid at heart. So that I knew I was going to be working with kids early on, but it actually wasn't until my orthodontist experience I felt really like had a strong like affinity or like admiration for them. It was a husband-wife couple in the Austin area. The husband still practices actually, but yeah, I absolutely like was like, I get to see these people all the time. I felt like I had more of a relationship with them than like you would a pediatrician, because I was always getting wire changes and just talking to them every, month or so back then for 3 years. So I was like, man, dentistry is really cool. And the wife provider at the time like really encouraged me to maybe pursue that avenue. So it wasn't until I was in ortho myself that like the shift to dentistry kind of happened. And then again, I always had that like affinity or kinship to like young children. So I contemplated ortho and pedo for a long time. It was a hard decision, even in dental school, like which residency I apply for, but I love the little like 2 to 4 year olds. I love babies, like infants. So that's the route I chose. But I still really love orthodontic treatment, and I try to employ some of that in my pediatric practice now.
And that's a perfect segue to what I was going to kind of ask about next. And then we'll get into kind of the process of building the startup. But I think one area that you came into in a really good position as a brand new practice, which, being a startup, as you've lived it, is such a challenge in so many ways. But you came into the practice with a lot of, great skill sets and services that you could offer outside of just bread and butter pediatric dentistry. So like for our audience, she does a lot with, tongue and lip tie and early, ortho, expansion, and just a lot of things that I think we're able to differentiate you, number one, but also it allows you to provide even more value, to patients and, the parents, and really educate, because we've had this conversation before. I think there's a real lack of education in the space when it comes to airway and the ADHD symptoms and all the different things that can kind of come from that. So where I'm kind of going with this was that something that you were able to really just like pursue in those years of, the associateship before being a practice owner? And I guess, what's your, feedback or suggestion for those who are, right now not practice owners, but have the opportunity maybe to expand their knowledge?
Yeah, I would say, I did try to seek some associateships that provided that opportunity. The intent was good. I found like-minded people. I reached out to them. I worked for a few of them in some capacity, but I found myself, like, while I learned a lot, actually mentoring some of their procedures. Most of them really, I think, were in a way territorial of those services. They are so niche. Some of them are higher, maybe liability to a standpoint, like having infants that you're doing these kind of invasive procedures on. There are risks, I'm sure. Now that I'm an owner, I kind of can empathize or understand that maybe where they had been coming from. So I got to see things, but I didn't really get to like implement them a ton under other people. There was one job I did have, and it was a heavily commuting position where I did get to have that clinical autonomy, but that was all after I had already done a lot of the self work and investing in myself and taking continuing education. I had some of these other jobs where I had mentorship, but couldn't do those things in that setting. And then this other job, I've had a lot of jobs going back to that, but this other opportunity had more of that autonomy. And I had learned kind of those foundational skill sets to employ them to some degree. Again, didn't have all the tools I could, but I had a laser. I was able to do some of these procedures. I'd already taken a lot of continuing education. So I felt competent and proficient that I could operate like on my own without like a mentor for these procedures at that opportunity. And then once that associateship was over, I had really full confidence that I could do this like on my own. I really didn't need to work under anyone. I had learned from like kind of the best of the best in my area, and even from a national perspective, I had the opportunity to shadow some people, and then doing some of that, on my own. I felt like I could jump into the deep end finally. Still scary,
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, and it's like you said too, it's like one of my favorite quotes is, I can't remember who said it. It definitely was not me,
Yeah.
so I'm not taking credit for this, but it's like, someone said, a comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. And, when you talk about that, having these skill sets, and then it's still, it's scary in implementing that, and especially as a practice owner, but, I know it's had a really significant impact on your, patients and the community. And so I definitely think that's paid off. Now, going back to so the practice itself, so you've got these these skills and experience coming into it, so I feel like clinically you're probably sounds like fairly confident. Now you're entering a whole new world, right, of business ownership, which is just literally a whole new it's different, for anybody. But somebody who's practicing dentistry, you've been doing that, but going into business ownership. So let me do you remember like when you were, you got the location that you were going to be, building in Round Rock and all of that, like how long did the build out take? Was it a fresh build? Was it, an existing like building already? What kind of happened there?
Yeah, the last year of my life has been a blur, but I will say it took quite some time for me to actually like find a lease space that I really, really liked. I think I was really selective or picky in those like specs that I wanted for my practice. Like case in point, I really wanted three sides of windows. I wanted an end unit. I was like, if I'm going to be here more than my house, I want ample like lighting. I don't want to feel like I'm in a dungeon. And oddly enough, it's really hard to find an end unit lease space. But so I found a spot. I did my demographic search. I at the time used Dental Graphics. I think it's still a company. I don't think they've been acquired or anything, but that was fantastic. I think that's my best recommendation for anyone as far as demographic data is to invest in that report. Because I ran a couple of locations. I had nailed it down to totally opposite sides of Austin, north versus south and west versus east. And they came back. We had a phone call, like robust data pointing to, out of what I had chosen, Round Rock was kind of going to be the spot. It was, already the population was there. It wasn't like a 5-year play of like, there's going to be ample growth there. It's like, you can open your doors now and pay the bills hopefully, and based on the data. So that was really helpful, I think, for me. And now hindsight, I think I can give validity to that data that, it's been a good good location for us. But in regards to the actual build out, I feel like what took the longest, it's all a blur. I've had a baby since then, but lots of sleepless nights. But what I can remember, the bulk of everything was like planning out the blueprint, sorry. That I spent hours, copious amounts of hours, meetings with the GC, my kind of consultant and realtor at the time, just kind of reconfiguring, trying to work the space. I chose a space that's like definitely a little bit smaller than I had envisioned. So I was trying to like optimize the space for revenue generating areas versus non, just dead space. So that took a long time. But once we like settled on a plan, I feel like it was only a couple of months before they threw up the drywall, had everything plumbed. It moved pretty fast after that.
At what moment, as the practice is starting to come together and that your opening date's going to be approaching in a few months and all that, at what moment was it, do you remember, where you're like, oh my gosh, like this is happening, like I'm doing this? And whether that was a, oh my gosh, what have I done? I'm doing this, or a, yes, I'm doing this, because I'm sure it maybe fluctuates.
Yeah.
It's normal, but was there a moment leading up to where you're like, oh my gosh?
I don't know if there was one salient moment, but once I had opened the schedule, like I had some people like helping answer phones remote. I was answering phones between patients at my associate jobs. Once I started scheduling people remotely in my software and there were like too many to like back out type of thing, or like I was like, this is happening whether I have a shell or like there's actually dental chairs in place, like this is happening and I've got to figure it out and coordinate everything to be all my like, T's crossed and I's dotted to have the office ready by the date I have these people scheduled for. So I think that made it real, just actually having appointments on the schedule and like a fair amount where it was like, okay, I can't, like reschedule this day, or like we've got to just make it happen and roll with it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And so, now as you're leading up to that and things are getting real, and tell the audience, when was your official like opening month and year?
Yeah. I opened October 23rd or 24th of 2023. So the end of October. And I don't think we had like an official permit signed, but I was in a place I had probably for the whole week, maybe 12, 20 patients. But I was like, I'm not rescheduling these patients. I have an operational, like everything's in place. I'm just going to roll it and like see these people. And then I ended up getting like the official, like, I don't know, the certificate of occupancy the next week. But I was like, I'm not going to start out on a bad foot and like reschedule these people. So I'd say technically maybe we opened the beginning of November, but I did see people that last week of October. Yeah.
So now that you're, approaching the 2-year mark, which, for our audience listening, we're going to get into some of the lessons learned, maybe things Sarah, wish she'd known beforehand, some of the things she's taken away afterwards. So all of you can definitely, get into that. But right before we get into the lessons, I want to ask, what was it like leading up to that first week, let's say week of opening, when you're seeing patients? Did you have patients? Number one, were there patients for the opening, or were you standing around not doing anything? And the second part is, if they're, the patients that you had there, what kind of went into getting the word out prior to, opening?
Good question. We did have patients. I'd have to pull up the software to guesstimate how many, but I want to say we had like 6 or 7 day one even. And it wasn't consistent every single day was like that. But the first week I would guesstimate again, like 20, 25 patients for the full week that we were open, which felt like a lot for a brand new week one. But I think leading up to it, you and I don't know when we connected, but I'd like to plan, and I'm pretty sure that we had like a digital marketing plan in place where we had some ads rolling out like preemptively. I don't know how many months before, but I know I had bought a phone line, got my VoIP phone system set up like a few months in advance so that I could take those inbound calls. I figured these people have to have a website to go to if we're going to drive like any traffic. So you'll have to reference like when we like actually got off the ground with all that stuff. But I do know it was like a few months in advance that I think is necessary if you want to have like a fair amount of patients in the beginning, is to have those appointments open, the schedule open a couple months prior to your launch date or your opening date, in like a decent digital marketing plan, a few Facebook ads at the very least out. And I think good.
Don't wait until the doors open to start.
Exactly. That's what for sure what I would say. Yeah.
Well, and we did. With your practice, it was a lot of fun too, because I think you had ads on Facebook and Instagram at least 3 months before the opening, if not 4 months, just kind of updating people on the progress of the practice. I remember you recording videos, kind of like sharing, and that was so cool because, again, that gets people, to know you, to feel like they get a, I guess, get to know their kid's potential future dentist and got the word out before. And absolutely, then you start getting patients to sign up, say, when you open, I want to schedule my kid's appointment. And so what was that like the first time you started seeing those inquiries coming in, even before opening? Was it just like, oh my gosh, like, yes, people actually want to book their children's appointments here? Like, what's that feeling when you see those first kind of inquiries come through?
It's like reaffirming. It makes you feel like, okay, I stand a chance. I think you initially are like really elated and excited and like, oh, someone wants to see me. How cool is that? And then it's sometimes a little bit followed by like, oh my gosh, oh shit, am I ready for this? Do I have the staff in place? So like, I think it was a lot of initial excitement followed by the reality of like, oh, I am brand new to this. Am I going to survive? Or are they going to like me? Are we going to have everything we need day one? So I think a lot of people probably can relate to that.
Yep. It's like the initial like dopamine hit of like feeling like you said wanted, needed. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I got to make sure that we're opening on time. So when I, like you said, I don't have to reschedule these patients because we can't open on time, or I got to find the staff and the team. And there's a lot of like other things that go to it. But you're right. It's at least the fact that feeling like, all right, there's something here. At least we're not going to go in and there's not going to be any patients. So how far out before opening did you start like interviewing people to, hire as team, and what were your first positions that you hired?
I was fortunate. One of the assistants that I worked with at my last associateship before starting, she is fantastic. I hope she listens to this podcast, but she's just an amazing assistant. She knows all the services I offer. But she kind of leap of faith was at a place where she was wanting a change in employment. I think that for a myriad of reasons. And I had started up, and she had offered to help me start off the practice as a dental assistant. So I had that covered. I had trained a couple of other people I had worked with, like PRN, because I knew I was like, we're going to be pretty dead. I'm really going to need one front, one back. So I had some other assistants like do some of the training with me for different things early on, but they were more like backups or PRN. I will say hiring a front person was a complete nightmare. I don't have any advice for that. Like, I started with ample time. I had someone agree to it. One seemed great on paper, and then literally the week prior to opening, like pulled out kind of, I don't even know, said she had some personal things going on, and I effectively have no one hired 1 week before launch for the front desk position. And I'd been answering calls and having some friends help out with some of that kind of stuff. But that was very nerve-wracking, not having someone in place in like that close to the start date. I ended up finding someone, and she stayed with me for about like 10 or 11 months. And we've since transitioned to other people in the front. But that was a wild time. I think staffing is probably the hardest thing about ownership. There's a few hard things, but personnel is really a challenge, I think. Yeah.
You're not alone. Yeah, it's it happens all the time, honestly. A lot of people, we work with and talk to, where it's just like, my front desk, didn't show up on the second day of us being open, just like
Yeah.
didn't show up. And it's frustrating.
Right.
You know, that is a very frustrating thing, because you know you have this vision for this, you know, thing that you're building,
Right.
and somebody can, you know, come off as say all the right things and seem like the perfect match, and you
Mhm.
just never know. And I know that's something everybody struggles with. But in kind of seeing that happen, did you take any lessons away, or I guess take anything away from that for like future hires that you were going to make? Was there any, I guess, silver lining in that?
Well, and actually the story just kind of, I don't know, took a turn. So like I hired that individual. She ended up being with me for 11 months, but it was kind of just a volatile individual. And I think you don't really even realize as an associate all the different personalities and situations and like life factors of the personnel that you hire. But being an owner is just like, it's a lot to digest. But anyways, I kind of knew that it probably was going to work long term with that individual, but I always worked with doing my part-time job and like having faith that she would like manage the practice. But anyways, I had my daughter 7 weeks early, and this individual left like, I want to say like 8 days after I gave birth. Was the most vulnerable, I would say stressful spot I thus far have had in life. And I'm sure life will have more stressful things at a future point, but giving birth to my daughter like 7 weeks early, and then having someone leave like 1 week after that, and you don't really get a maternity leave, your daughter's a NICU. It was crazy times, and I honestly didn't think I was going to make it through as an owner. It was a really tough time postpartum, and just trying to manage the practice from a hospital bed, because I had a C-section, all the things. But yeah, so I think, that was a crazy time. And I'm fortunate we found some people in the front now that are more stable. But I think what I learned from that scenario, I had like a crossroads of, do I hire another person in the front that wears all of the hats 100%? And I know some people have that like philosophy or business mindset, and I had until this point, but I was like, I never want to be in a position where I'm that vulnerable. Like my practice and the foundation of it is that subject to like a major change or a rocky foundation. So I kind of used that illuminated to me, I want to outsource for some major things in the practice, like billing, insurance verification. So that way, if there is like unforeseen circumstances, someone has to move, some major event happens in their life and they can no longer work for you, your whole operation isn't, subject to crash or what it felt like that at the moment.
I think that is a very important lesson. And I've gone through something similar as a business owner. And yeah, like total agreement. Like there was time where it was like, I just wanted to be done because, it's just so hard. And then, you got to be there for, your family. And when you have a child, it changes, everything. And yeah, I mean, it's an amazing story though, because it shows like how you pulled through. Do you ever look back at it and you're like, how did I pull through that? How did I get on the other side of it? And does it give you any confidence too, knowing like, if I went through that, giving birth 7 weeks early, my daughter was in the NICU, had, person quit, all of that. If I got through that and we're still here today, it's like, I can get through anything.
Yeah. I did feel that way for probably the past year. And then recently, like hiring to grow as like the practice grows for like third people. We've had like just a lot of temps that we've tried, or like very PRN people that I feel humbled again. Like we are struggling. I have two great assistants, two great people in the front, like a core 4 foundation, but I'm needing to onboard other people. And it's honestly, that's been humbling again of like, am I going to find the person? I feel a little bit stressed because now we're seeing a lot more people per day. But yeah, for a whole year, it was like, if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything. That is hands down the hardest 2 months of my life. It's a blur, but yeah, I'm being humbled again.
and that's life right there, right? It's just like right when you get to that spot, then the next thing, next challenge hits you.
Yeah.
But I have no doubt, Sarah, you'll
Yeah.
overcome, this little challenge and roadblock as well.
Yeah.
I no doubt in that. But, well, as we're starting to get in towards the end here, really just want to ask around, what is, and maybe it was, staffing, hiring, or
Oh
maybe it's
yeah.
something different too, but is there anything that just totally caught you off guard as a new practice owner, or about practice ownership that you didn't know prior to doing it? And what would maybe be your advice, for those considering going down that path to, maybe learn from?
Yeah. I don't know if I can nail it to one thing. I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot about a lot of things, and I still feel so ignorant at the same sense about everything. But yeah, it's like the more you know, the less you really feel like you know. But definitely, I think like the personnel aspect, just knowing that you're kind of like you're the head of HR, you're the head of everything as you're a small startup, billing, you wear all the hats, and you are the one to make those decisions. People come to you for, questions of how do they handle a situation. And at the end of the day, it is your practice. So you have to make these hard decisions. And a lot of times I do feel like I'm kind of being pulled in all directions like Gumby, or don't always have the bandwidth to manage it all. So yeah, I think I just felt ignorant to how many hats that I am wearing and I have to wear. And everyone tells me that it gets better with time. I'm just like, when is that? But no, and I don't know if there's any coursework per se that I took in regards to startup life. I think I just really did a lot of researching on the different forums. I had listened to some startup podcasts prior, found you on a podcast. It wasn't your podcast, but on another podcast. And I was like, that's my guy. I need to call him. So I think doing some of that, like you said, investing in like dental graphics. I had found someone that does some startup consulting, not like on nothing crazy like ideal practices, but something like local in Texas. Connected with the right people. So that was helpful. I think I did as best as I could to like be as prepared as possible, but it's just one of those things. I think it's like parenting. Like you don't really know what you're getting into, and you can't explain parenthood to someone that really isn't a parent. There's just too many adjectives and it ebb and flows. So I don't know that there's any one thing that like prepared me. You don't know what you don't know type of thing. Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
That's
Yes.
right.
I don't
It's
know.
like, that's what Socrates,
Yeah.
the famous philosopher Socrates, that was his famous quote. The only thing I know is that I know nothing. And it's like, I love
Yeah.
that quote so much. Because you're right.
Yes.
It's like right when you think, or in my case, what's happened to me in the past is right when I think that I know, not everything, but I'm like so confident, then something else
Yeah.
brings me right back down. You're like, oh, yep,
Yep.
I shouldn't have done that. I got cocky, and look what happens when you get
Yes.
cocky, right? It's you get
Right.
humbled, like
For
you said
sure.
earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
But another
okay,
thing I did,
and just
I
again, you said, yeah,
oh yeah, I think that for me, I really felt like having a good brand or branding was really impactful. Or I don't know how much it is or it's actualized to be, but I know you and I spent a long time on my branding, and I had interviewed so many people that do branding and logo, and seeing other different dentists come to market with like really strong branding. Like think of like Happy Tooth and Salt Lake. But in that, so I kind of was like felt convicted, like I need to have a solid brand, and you helped a lot with that, with my logo and the name even of my LLC. And I felt like I spent a lot of time on that, and I would like to think that it's translated to good things, but I think maybe people should really kind of invest in like having a solid brand, whether that comes to logo or I don't know all the terminology I'll use, but kind of the branding package to transcend like the community. People know Shine, they know I have unique colors, very vibrant. I love my logo. So I think there's a lot to that really helps like a new practice kind of stick out from run-of-the-mill older offices maybe.
Definitely. It's your presence, right? And that's the thing that you've done a really good job of, even consistently here coming up on your second year of being open. It's like you still, you're everywhere on social media, from, ads that are running,
Yeah.
highlighting patient experiences, services you provide. Obviously, then your existing patients start talking because of the experience you provide. I mean, you have, as of recording this today, you have 350, 5-star reviews on Google, which is amazing. Not even a full 2 years into being opening. So then that is a brand too, right? It builds off of the existing patients that you've already seen and that experience. So I totally, you're preaching to the choir here, of course, agree with that, investing in a strong brand. And I think also realizing too, and this is something that's hard for people at first, but we want, our practice, our name to be at a certain level right away, right? It's like early on, it's like we know, it's like, oh, we want to be at this number of patients per month, or we want to be at this level of production, or we want to have this number of Google reviews. But really, understanding it takes small steps. And one of the things that I try to tell myself every day is just, if I just get 1% better today, just 1% better today, that's going to lead me to where I want to go. I want my company to go. And I think we, especially dentists and working with dentists, are very driven individuals. I think sometimes you just got to sit back, reflect a little bit. Where have I come? How far have I come in such amount of time? Even if maybe I'm not right where I want to be at today, it's like, am I on track for the growth? And I don't know, is that something you had to tell yourself, and that maybe that first few months of being open and the unpredictableness and all of that?
Yeah, and I still have to tell myself that every day. Yeah, no, I feel like I'm always striving to do better and like learn more and evolve the practice, be a better owner, be a better boss, be a better dentist, all the better mom, all the things. But yeah, I think each day, if I'm, to your point, like if I can do a small task or like head in that trajectory at the end of the day, that's all you can do. But that was hard for me because I'm someone that likes to just have it all right, like do all the things. I don't like just little pieces every day, but yeah, I think it has to be that way with owning a small dental practice. So I'm growing to be that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, final thing here is for our audience listening, if there are pediatrics, but maybe pediatric dentists out there listening, or even just general dentists, but somebody who's like, I really know that I'm wanting to get into practice ownership, whether it's a startup, whether it's an acquisition, whatever the case is, of everything that we've kind of talked about today, and maybe what we haven't talked about, what's just kind of like your final little, like piece of encouraging advice to that, individual before they embark on that journey?
You can totally do it. Because if I can do it, you can do it. I think anybody can do it. It's daunting, but it's so rewarding at the same time. Some of the hardest days, definitely, but I don't think I'd ever had this clinical autonomy to be the provider I want to be and really have impactful changes in people's lives outside of just doing kind of run-of-the-mill routine dentistry. I think my biggest advice to anyone watching this would probably be to invest in yourself. Like from a clinic, if you want to be a clinician long-term, I really set out to be kind of a really different kind of provider. I offer a lot of niche services, and you don't have to do that, but I think anything that you do, really try and do your best. So if that means taking some continuing education on a different, a modality or something cutting edge, a differentiator in the services you can offer, just level up, really. I think that's the biggest thing that's maybe set me apart in the community. So I definitely advocate for people investing in themselves, and it's going to just pay it forward. And word of mouth, you're going to be known in the community that, hey, go to this doctor. They do a lot of really cool things. They've taken a ton of continuing education. I can vouch for them. Yeah, I have a lot of mutual patients that we've had successful cases on. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. But I think anyone can do it. It's daunting, but on the other side, can be stressful. There's a lot more clinical autonomy that I have that I know for sure I wouldn't have as an associate.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that, Sarah. No, yeah, people are going to love this episode. For those listening, thank you so much, for listening to this, and definitely, go into the show notes down below, check out, Sarah's Shine Pediatric Dental Co.'s website, and just see the whole vibe of the practice. She's built something, really special there, and it's been, from our side of it, an honor to, play a small part in that as well, and just really cool to see the growth of the practice and of you, personally too. That's, I think, the beautiful thing about business is kind of seeing the growth of everything in that.
Yeah.
So thank you again for being on here.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it. And I know you're going to crush it for the rest of the year.
You too. Yes. Sounds great. Well, bye guys.